They lived holy lives and lives of great sanctity. Okay? Actually, the little children, Fatima, you may sit down, okay? The little children at Fatima.
One of them just died, or isn't the youngest one still alive? Or?
Well, actually, she was the oldest one. She died some years ago.
Yeah.
She died about 10 years ago.
I thought it was
The little children, when the Blessed Mother appeared to them in 1917, she appeared from May, June, July, August, September, and October, and gave them a message basically to pray and make sacrifices for sinners. They were shown a vision of hell in July 13th, where sinners go because there's no one to pray and make sacrifices for them. So that motivated them to pray all the harder and make little sacrifices day by day. They were shepherds. They used to even forego their food and not drink water in the hot sun, just as a sacrifice for sinners, for the conversion of sinners. And because the Blessed Mother was appearing to them in May, and June, and July, and August, and September, telling them to pray, people weren't believing, and so they asked if some sign could be given to show people that the Blessed Mother was really appearing to them. And on on October 13th, 1917, there were about 70,000 people gathered outside of Fatima, and everyone there who was present saw what they called the miracle of the sun. They saw the sun spin and dance and shoot forth colors and then come plunging to the earth as if it were going to destroy the earth. People were fearful. They knelt down and they looked up. The sun was in its normal spot. And another thing that attests to the miracle is if you see photos of that day, everything was wet. There were puddles on the ground because it had been raining all day. After that miracle of the sun, as it's called, everything was bone dry. All the water had dried up within a few minutes. The puddles of everything, their wet rain gear, everything was dry. And even the atheists who were there to mock and make fun of what was being claimed, that the Blessed Mother was appearing, they couldn't deny what they saw. They saw the sun do these things, and they had to write it up in the local papers in Portugal. So two of those children, they're the ones that are blessed, Jacinta and Francisco. They died within a few years, and the other seer at Fatima, Lucy, she lived to be about 96 years old. She died in, I think it was about 2004, and she was a nun, a Carmelite nun in Portugal. And she wrote memoirs telling of what the Blessed Mother told the three children. Okay? That's how we know what the Blessed Mother was saying to them, how that we have to pray and make sacrifices for the conversion of sinners, which is basically the gospel message. Okay? That's what the popes tell us. The popes that visited Fatima, I've been there a couple of times, and at the very site where the Blessed Mother appeared. And the popes tell us that the message of Fatima is really the gospel message. Because Jesus, when he began preaching the gospel, he said, repent, in other words, turn away from sin, and reform your lives, and believe in the gospel. So the message of Fatima was really a call to do that, knowing that people are sinners and they tend to fall away from teaching of Christ and put their souls in jeopardy as a result of it. Anyway, we're going to continue with the topic we were on the other day. There's basically a week left of this term, and I'm going to try to wrap things up with on the sheets I handed out to you, okay, with the principles of the Catholic Church's social doctrine, okay. So please take those out because we'll be going over them this morning, okay. And on page 3 of that document, actually page 4, okay? Page 3, we were talking about the principle of solidarity, okay? Now, the principle of solidarity, I'd like to simplify things, okay? Just so people can remember, not make it too complex, okay? The principle of solidarity basically is this, okay? Solidarity, what does that mean? Okay? Solidarity means that, okay, this is what it means basically, right? We are all joined together, okay? We're all joined together, okay, by our common humanity. Okay? Because we have inherent dignity and value. Okay? Inherent, that means it's in us, okay? Part of our nature, inherent dignity, okay? And value, okay? Because, again, okay, we were made in God's image, okay? We're made in God's image, meaning we have intellect, okay? Free will, okay? And we are redeemed by Christ, okay? We're redeemed by Jesus, okay? And our goal is heaven, okay? Get to heaven. Okay? Now, what all this means is that, okay, we're all joined together, a common humanity. We have inherent dignity and value because we're made in God's image, intellect, free will. We're redeemed by Jesus. Our goal is heaven. What does that mean, practically speaking? Okay, that means, okay, it means, on a practical level, that we treat people, okay, we treat others, okay, with respect, okay, and love, okay. And this includes workers, okay, employed by us, okay, if we're employers, okay, employed by owners, okay. That's what it has to be practically. If we're employing workers, and we're all made in God's image, and we're supposed to be treating people well, we have to treat workers well. And we know from the history of the Industrial Revolution that the workers weren't being treated well, okay? The workers were being oppressed, they were not treated with proper dignity, okay? Another corollary to this, or another way of saying this, solidarity, okay, is, as we said before, it's social charity, okay? Social charity, that's the active part of it. We want to be charitable, okay? Actively, okay? Actively. Practice social charity towards others, okay? Now, if you look at page 4 of the sheets I handed out to you, the bottom part of that, one of the rights that workers have is to organize and form labor unions. Which, by the way, as I say here, is guaranteed by the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, the right to freedom of association. Our founders recognized that people have a right to get together for different purposes, okay? And this right is needed because individual workers are at a disadvantage when they're bargaining with an employer. Because the employer can say, well, I'm just going to pay you hardly anything for your work. And if the workers unite and get together and say, no, we want a fair wage, we want decent working hours, we want a day off to worship God, okay? That gives them leverage and bargaining power against against an employer. Now, Pope Leo XIII, in his encyclical back in 1891, Rerum Novarum, he laid out the rights that workers have. And those rights are listed on the bottom of this sheet. It's number 7. Besides the right to organize and collectively bargain, okay? You join together and you bargain with the employers, okay? We have other rights. Workers have other rights, okay? And those are, for example, okay? You know, what's the first one? Listen, okay?
The right to a day
Yeah. The right to a day of rest, okay? To worship God. That's basically following the commandments. You follow the 3rd commandment, okay? There should be a day, there's 6 days you work, the 7th day is the day of rest, a time to worship God, a time to recreate, to not work, to spend time with the family, okay? That's a basic human right that God commands of us, actually, okay? So, that right wasn't given to workers back when factories first started to be built. They were having them work 7 days a week. That's unjust, okay? And another right, Michael, what's the second right under that, okay?
I don't have a sheet.
You don't have a sheet, why not? Wait, where are your sheets, okay?
I left them at home. So I'll send it out for sure.
Well, you know, I'm going over this in class, okay? I need people to, you can't participate if you don't have the sheets I hand out to you, okay? This is not right and proper. I'm calling on people here. I expect you to be prepared for class, okay, and to be able to respond. So just hand the sheet back, okay? Hey, Patrick, number 2. Workman's.
Oh, alright. The right to workman compensation.
Okay. If. What does it say? The right to workman's compensation.
So if the worker should be injured or unable to work for a time and to some type of unemployment insurance so that one does not suffer while out of work.
Okay, that's what the Pope called for. Okay. Some type of compensation for workers if they're injured, so the family would be starving. Okay. That seems right and equitable and just. It's the type of thing you want to do if you have this idea of solidarity in mind. Okay? I'm employing people. I want to treat them with respect and dignity. And a worker gets hurt, you don't just cast them off and say, "Well, that's too bad. You crushed your hand in the machine. Now you can't work." Well, then your family's going to starve, basically. Well, no. The papal teaching here was kind of using reason, and it's based upon this principle of solidarity. This is where it comes from. Okay? That we're joined together, we're linked together by our common humanity. Okay? We should respect other people. Okay? The third right that's listed there, Catherine, what is it?
The right to safe working conditions with reasonable working hours.
So we know that with the Industrial Revolution, people were working 12, 14-hour days, 16-hour days even, sometimes. I mean, they were put to work. Why did they have to work so much? Why did they have to work at such long hours? Why?
Because you got low wages.
They got low wages. That's the other thing, okay? So that's what follows. That's the next thing, okay? The right to a just wage, sometimes it's called a family wage, okay? By which a man can support his family so that his wife and children don't have to work. And that some money can be put into savings, okay? The unjustly low wages forces wives into the workplace. This results in couples being less willing to have more children for fear of not being able to support them, using sinful means like contraception, sterilization to prevent conception of a new life because they're afraid they'll have to go out and work. Okay, this was all seen back 100 years ago. Okay? This is what papal teaching has addressed. Okay, and the just wage. Okay. the bottom line there on page 4, Pope John Paul II wrote another encyclical in 1981 called Laborum Exercens, meaning on human work. Okay? And Pope John Paul II teaches that, okay, and now we're on page 5, in the final analysis, okay, the entire social order depends upon a just wage paid to the worker. Okay? So if you want a just social order, if you want an order that is just in society, pay your workers a just wage. Okay? If workers aren't being paid a just wage, you have disorder, you have injustice. Okay? And not paying workers a just wage is one of the sins that cries out to heaven. This comes from Scripture, and there are a number of sins that cry out to heaven. Has anyone ever heard of them? Sins that cry out to heaven, yes. There's a number of sins that cry out to heaven because they're so great. Okay? The first sin that cries out to heaven is in Scripture. It's the first grave sin that we see after the original sin. It's the sin of Cain killing Abel. The Scriptures tell us, Genesis says that the blood of Abel cries out to heaven because Cain killed him. Murder is a sin that cries out to heaven. We read forward in Genesis, the sin of homosexual sodomy is another sin that cries out to heaven. That's in the book of Genesis as well. Another sin that cries out to heaven is treating unfairly foreigners and widows and orphans. Because people that are foreigners that come to a new country, you don't want to treat them unfairly, or widows, they've lost the means of support for them, for their families, or orphans, okay? You don't want to treat them unfairly. Because historically people have been treated unfairly. Charles Dickens was writing about this. If you think about a novel, Charles Dickens wrote a novel about, a couple of novels about this, but I can think of one in particular, okay? An orphan who was rather kind of got involved in some criminal activity. Does anyone know what novel that is? What? Oliver Twist, yeah. Because orphans were treated like chattel, like property. Okay? So that's another sin that cries out to heaven. Still another sin that cries out to heaven is defrauding a worker of wages, or not paying a worker fairly. Okay? And I'm going to read here from Deuteronomy 24, verses 14 and 15. Okay? Deuteronomy is the 5th book of the Bible, and here's what Deuteronomy says. You shall not defraud a poor and needy servant, whether he be one of your own countrymen or one of the aliens in your communities. You shall pay him his day's wages, for he is poor and looks forward to them. Otherwise, he will cry to the Lord against you, and you will be held guilty. Another place where this same sin is mentioned is the Epistle of James. Okay? James is chapter 5, verse 4 in James. This is what James says. Okay? Behold, the wages you withheld from the workers who harvested your fields are crying aloud. The cries of the harvesters have reached the ears of the Lord of hosts. Okay? So, God considers defrauding a worker of his wages a sin that cries out to heaven. So not paying a worker, not paying a worker a just wage, okay, is a sin, okay, that cries out to heaven. That's Deuteronomy 24, 14, 15, and James 5, verse, it's 4, is it? Yeah. Verse 4, right? So, God sees this as a grave injustice if workers are not paid fairly, if you take advantage of workers, especially the poor, because it's usually the poor that can take advantage of. Okay? They come, they have no means, and someone will pay them basically wages that are, you can call them slave wages. Okay? Now, getting back to the principle of solidarity and the idea that we should be helping others, okay? In the sheets I handed out yesterday, okay, one of the questions I dealt with, or I had to deal with, I should say, was the idea of what is a business's goal, okay, or goals, okay? What are the goals of the business? Is it only to make a profit? And Milton Friedman, who was, he's a very famous economist, okay? He wrote a book called Capitalism and Freedom, where he said, and I have his words here, okay? The one and only social responsibility of a business is to use its resources, engage in activities to increase profits. Okay? So that's it. Okay? That's what his point of view is. That's the point of view of a number of people, okay, who are in business, that we're only in business to make profits. Well, how did the Pope respond to that in his encyclical on the 100th anniversary of the Church's social teaching of Pope Leo XIII? You answered this question yesterday. What did the Pope say? John Paul II, is profit the only thing that a business should be concerned about? Yes or no? Becky? No. What else should a business be concerned about? What is the greatest resource of a business? Okay? The people that work in the business. Okay? So, and again, this principle of solidarity comes in mind. Okay? Okay? If your greatest resource in a business is the people that work for you, well then, gaining a profit should not be the only thing that you're in business for. You should also be in business in order to provide workers a decent wage, decent hours, a decent living. Okay? That's not done, and it hasn't been done. It's still not being done. And I'll give you some examples here. Okay? I lived in Mexico for about 10 weeks, about 25 years ago. Okay? I was in the seminary. I went down there to learn Spanish, and I was interested because I knew what the church's social teaching was, and I had read and heard that GM, General Motors, and Ford had moved plants down to Mexico, Juarez, Mexico was one of the places. Okay? And I was just curious, okay, because this has always been a concern of mine, the right of workers and just wages, and I inquired down there. I said, okay, what types of wages are the workers getting down here? Why would GM and Ford move their plants down to Mexico, from Detroit or wherever they were? Okay, why would they do that? Why do you think they would do that? Okay? Why do you think, Michael? What do you think GM and Ford? What interest do you think they would have moving their plants down to Mexico? Get cheaper wages. Okay, so that was my thinking. So I inquired. I said, okay, what type of wages are they getting? They were getting about $1 an hour. And I said, well, another thing I asked, a follow-up question was, well, our workers, with these wages that they're getting, are they able to afford a home with running water? I just threw that out as an example. And the answer was no. They couldn't afford a house with running water. The people that worked at the GM and Ford plants, okay, they had a building for housing workers built, where you had one, an apartment building, okay, that had a courtyard in the middle, and in the middle you had drinking water, so people have to go out to their apartments and come down and take water, okay? I don't think that's very respectful to the workers. They weren't getting good wages. Yes.
There's a Catholic church down in Rockford, and they would have like their members of congregation, whatever, they would have them to donate, or not really donate, but put money in the church for when they die, they can have a funeral or whatever, and the church would hold the money.
Okay.
And the church ended up with having like $25 million in their savings account in cash because of so many of the people, because it was a huge Catholic church, and some of the people would give money into it like their entire life. And you know, $10,000 I guess would be a good amount for a funeral, but they would do it their whole life, so they're giving more than that. And then the church would keep the money that it didn't spend on the people's profit or on their funeral. And so they ended up with all this extra cash just sitting in the savings account. And Rockford is not a very high class area.
Right.
It feels
Yes,
like
yeah.
white trash. So,
Well,
but they had all that money in the savings account just sitting there, and I don't really see maybe spending some of that money in Rockford for the charity would
yeah,
help.
well,
But
that's part of social responsibility, okay, to do that.
do what?
To use our money responsibly.
But they didn't. They just held on to it.
Yeah, well, that's, I don't know all the circumstances there. I mean, if people are giving money to a parish for burial, and they're holding that money for people, there's nothing wrong with that in itself, okay?
$24
But,
million.
well, if they had a congregation of 50,000 people, that.
No, I'm talking like savings account. They had like a separate thing for the church, like things that they would use for the church. So that's like where they would have the funeral money. But the stuff that they didn't use, they put into the savings account, like in the church's savings account. It was like separate, and they had straight cash, millions of dollars in there.
Okay. Well, like I said, I don't know I can't really make a judgment on it. It doesn't sound like maybe they were becoming a bank almost, which churches really shouldn't do. Parishes want to collect money for needed repairs that may maybe arise down the line, things like this. We have savings put away for that. Because a new roof may cost hundreds of thousands of dollars in a big church. Okay? So sometimes you have to do that. Anyway, my point
it
is.
doesn't really seem like they're helping out many people if they're holding on to that much money.
Okay. Well, like I said, I don't know. I can't really make a judgment.
I'm just saying it sounds no different than GM. So
Well, that's apples and oranges. You're not talking about paying workers.
which makes a smoothie.
Pardon me?
Which makes a smoothie.
I can't understand you. What?
If you have more oranges than apples, then it tastes more like orange. If you have more apples than oranges, it tastes more like apples. So if you have Catholics with more money than the county or whatever, and they can help the people that they don't, then you got an unjust, I guess say company, if you want to say it like that.
Why are you
Just
saying
like
Catholics with more money? A lot of people have more money.
So don't we take money from the poor and give it to take money from the rich and give it to the poor if they don't need it? Like if they have 25 million worth, can't you say you can take some of that and give it to the poor? Like you were saying?
Yeah, maybe they should do that.
I don't know. It's your church, so I don't know.
Well, it's not my
Catholics.
parish. It's not my parish.
I thought they were all the same. I thought you were under one denomination.
Every parish has a pastor, and it's run.
But I thought
its
they all had
own
one leader,
corporation,
the
so to
Pope.
speak. Pardon me?
I thought they all had one leader, the Pope, right?
The leader. We do.
It just sounds like the Catholics are very in their belief.
Well, I don't think you can look at one church and say this is all Catholics. Just like you have Protestant churches with a lot of money too, and
But we're not talking about Protestant social doctrine.
no, we're talking about social doctrine that applies to everyone.
Every time you
Catholics,
say it, it's Catholic
Protestants,
social doctrine teaching. That's every time you say it, that's what we're talking about. Catholic social teaching.
applies to everyone across the board. Yeah. because this is the teaching of Christ, his gospel applied in the social realm. Okay, not just for Catholics. It's meant for everyone. Okay. Yeah.
My dad was talking to this Catholic guy a couple of days ago. They were working together, and he just says that Catholics, they're teaching now, they just take the Bible more as stories, and they look towards more of the Pope and traditions and stuff like that, and they don't really take what's in the Bible as account. And that was a believer in the church. Just yesterday, he brought that up, and he said that's the teachings that he's been getting.
Well, I don't,
And they weren't having a
know,
debate; they were just talking about it.
but we're getting off the point. Okay, I don't know what someone in some parish is getting taught.
He
by some.
actually goes to church in Kenosha, the Catholic church.
I don't know what they're being taught, but listen, I'm going to return to my point, okay? Because my point is paying workers a just wage, okay? That's the topic we're talking about, okay? So, another example that I can talk about is I heard an interview on the radio back in 1994 or 95. And this was just the time when companies in the United States began outsourcing their industry to other countries, especially to the Far East, to China. Okay? That started in the early 90s. And the person being interviewed was a senior vice president for Sears Roebuck Company, which does manufacturing for their merchandise. And the person on the National Public Radio asked the senior vice president from Sears, okay, well, we understand that you have moved a number of your factories from the United States to China for very low wages. At this time, they were getting about maybe 25 cents an hour was the going rate for wages in China. And the person interviewing the Sears vice president said, you know, in China there are no unions there. There are no safeguards for workers like we just talked about, a day of rest to worship, workman's compensation if someone gets hurt, safe working conditions, reasonable hours, okay? People were being made to work long hours for very low wages, and the person who's conducting the interview told this to the senior vice president from Sears. And I remember the response of the senior vice president saying, this is what he said. Well, as a senior vice president for Sears, I don't get involved in moral and ethical issues. My job is to make the biggest profit for my shareholders. And if I can do that, if we can do that by shipping our industry over to China and paying low wages, that is what we will do. Okay? Now that is capitalism run awry, without any moral guidelines, okay? Not caring about the workers, not having that principle of solidarity in mind. Now, I passed out a sheet yesterday along with the questions, and actually it was an article by Patrick Buchanan. Patrick Buchanan is a syndicated columnist, and Patrick Buchanan's article was titled "The Pope and Godless Capitalism." And he begins the article talking about, well, he quotes Pope Francis, the Pope, okay? The quote is, "This is called slave labor." And he says the Holy Father was referring to the $40 a month paid to apparel workers, those who make clothes, at the 8-story garment factory in Bangladesh that collapsed on top of them, killing more than 400 people. And then he quotes the Pope again, not paying a just wage focusing exclusively on the balance books, on financial statements, only looking at personal profit, that goes against God. That's a sin that cries out to heaven, in other words. And this is, as Patrick Buchanan said, the dark side of globalism and the outsourcing of industry and companies. Okay? He says, why is Bangladesh, after China, the second largest producer of apparel in the world? Okay? Why are there 4,000 garment factories in that impoverished country, which a few decades ago had almost none? Well, why is that? Because you can get basically slave labor there. And is this the way a business should be run? Well, in the questions that I passed out yesterday, I asked for your opinions, okay? So, Jim O'Leary, give me your opinion on that. On what I just asked. Can I repeat the question? No, I was just talking about how in Bangladesh, the workers are being paid slave wages, and a building collapsed on 400 workers because of unsafe working conditions, and people, those 4,000 apparel plants are now in that country, Bangladesh, okay, because they can get slave labor. Okay. What are your thoughts? Yeah. Okay. And I was hoping maybe for even a stronger reaction. I think it's darn right criminal to be treating workers, okay, to be treating workers in such a way. Okay? You're viewing people as merchandise, okay, by doing this. You're using them as just
a chair, a table. We put stuff on it. We sit on it.
So what's your opinion on this?
That part, I didn't even understand the question, so I didn't do that. But I did the rest of it.
You didn't understand the question.
Like in my way, I'm really different. I don't know. I didn't understand it in my own way, and I couldn't think about it. But now I understand it. What do I think about slave wages? What do I think about slave wages?
This is equivalent to slave wages, okay? Not to pay workers a decent wage, okay?
I think it's horrible. I think it's very bad.
And who's responsible for this?
The people, the owners, the government, everything.
We are responsible too, because we take top line the product and say.
In the catechism it says.
So we are responsible.
Okay, well, what did Patrick Buchanan say about how this happened? You remember? That was one of the questions. What did Patrick Buchanan gave us a little history about this. What was the history in regard to this? Why did we have a thriving garment industry, manufacturing clothes, Michael? Why did we have a thriving garment industry, manufacturing clothes, back 50 years ago, and now we don't? Why is that? No idea.
You got eBay.
John Center, what do you think?
John, because trade negotiations haven't been set up yet? Or
Trade negotiations, but why, 40, 50 years ago, we had plants in South Carolina, for example, making clothes. It was American made. We were paying workers a decent wage, okay? And now all those industries are gone. They're outsourced to places like Bangladesh. Okay? Why did that happen? Because industries just packed up and said, well, we can make more money by going overseas, and hey, that's it. Yes.
Isn't that the normal human thing to do, though? Just like if you see a better opportunity, you should take it.
Well, that's the problem. do you take a better opportunity knowing that you will be paying workers a slave wage, unsafe working conditions, long hours, okay?
It says survival of the fittest.
Yeah, evolution. The Darwinian theory.
Darwinism.
Darwinism.
Okay, wait. Say that again, Thomas. Say it loud, okay? I want everyone to hear this, okay? Go ahead. Speak it loud. Preach.
I don't understand why you're ripping on companies because I.
No, say what you just said, would you?
I'm gay.
Okay?
I don't understand why you rip on companies when we all would take the same opportunities to be more successful in life.
Would we?
I know I would.
I would.
I go to every third world country.
So if you were an owner of a company, okay, you would pull up here, say of Kenosha, okay, forget about you Kenoshites, you're getting a decent wage where you can, afford to live in a house and have a family. We're gonna pick up and move our industry over to Bangladesh where I can pay workers $40 a month and have no safe working conditions, I can have long hours. That's what you're gonna do?
I feel
That's
bad.
immoral.
I feel bad about it, but I don't even like Wisconsin. I would go from your farm.
Yes, oh, yes.
Okay, that depends though, how much were they making anyway before the company moved? Because, actually, they could make more money anyway.
But are they being paid a just wage? That's the thing.
What is
Are
They're
they
still making more.
Hey, I thought I remember
more
being
than
homeless.
nothing? More than nothing, but if you listen, if you're a starving person and you come to me and say, I have nothing, well, I'm going to pay you a couple of cents an hour just to work. Well, sure, they're going to work for that because that's all they have. But is it just?
I'll give them some more money.
Is it just?
Yes, just because they're getting more money.
No.
Oh my God. If you get more dough, isn't it good?
Get more dough.
Get more dough.
If you get more dough, that's what
This is the gospel teaching about slavery.
I don't.
No, it's not just. Okay? Not paying the worker a fair wage, causing them to work long hours, okay? In unsafe working conditions is an injustice. Okay? And if we do this, it's a sin that cries out to heaven.
Doesn't all sin do that?
What? Well, if you operate a business like that, yes. Okay.
Well, we still buy the product, so it's not like. Shouldn't we hold us responsible for that product?
Well, that's another aspect of it. Okay. When I was
Where's your suit made? Where's your suit made? China?
when I was
Indonesia?
when I was your age, okay, there were ads on television because when I was your age, there were ads on television by the American label. Okay, I'm willing to pay more if I know a good isn't made in some place where the workers are being paid unjustly. I'll look for something. Okay, I'll go to another store. I'll pay more. Okay, that's what we should do. That should be our response. Yes. See you Monday.
All juniors, please report to the